everyone, Jennifer Thiessen here, Artistic Director of Virtuosi Concerts here in sunny Winnipeg, Manitoba. I'm here with members of the Gryphon Trio in advance of our next concert, which is on April 2nd. That's a Saturday, 7:30 p.m. at St. Andrew's United Church. And we have with us today James Parker, pianist, cellist Roman Boris, and for the concert we will also have violinist Annalie Patipatanakoon. So thank you so much for taking time to talk with me today. I know you're traveling as well today.
Pleasure to be here.
And
Great to
yeah,
be here.
how does it feel to be back on the road with a full busy touring schedule again?
It's great, but it's really hectic. I mean, we just got back from Regina, and our flight there was some mechanical problems, so it didn't leave. And then the next morning, there was this whole insane struggle for me to get to the plane on time. And then it meant, two sort of, 7-hour teaching days with no break. And so, you just feel like you're sort of, gone a couple of rounds with a boxer at this point. But that's sort of what we've been doing for a long time. So there is a part of us that's really happy to be, back doing this.
That's
I will say, I mean, I think Jamie's covered it, but it's great to be traveling. It's nice to have that rhythm again, and just the focus on this, focus on that. I mean, there's a structure there actually that we haven't had, and that I really like actually, kind of the focus time, sitting in the plane. Okay, focus, do some other stuff. But of course, flying with the cello requires that Air Canada administration be in good shape. I like Air Canada. I don't, but there's certainly still some signs that they've been through a pandemic and that they're still getting it together. So hoping our flights today will be smooth, but those rounds will begin in just a few hours.
yeah. Oh, well, I really appreciate you taking the time on a busy day to talk to me. For listeners who aren't familiar with the history of the Gryphon Trio, could you tell me just briefly what's sort of the story of the group? Like, how did you get together? How long have you been playing together? That kind of thing.
I mean, I would say the story of the group is that, we were friends from Banff. We were at different universities. Roman and Annalie met up at Indiana. So they were the only two that were out of school together.
Okay.
And I guess at some point about 29 years ago, they got in touch with me, and they had worked with a pianist at IU, and the two of them wanted to really sort of make this a professional thing. So they were just asking around and asked if I'd be interested in playing, a couple concerts with them. And I had finished up at Juilliard. I was doing a Banff winter session, and I said, yeah, sure, yeah, we'll play a few concerts, see how it goes. And that was 29 years ago. So that's sort of the basic story.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
since then, yeah, how many concerts, how many tours, how many Juno awards and nominations? It's amazing. Yeah.
Lots of commissions as well, and education projects. I mean, we've had, yesterday I was speaking with somebody who had, who was from the I hadn't seen in a while, and who was from our business actually, and was just reminiscing about things that he knew that we had done, and it's been a good thing, actually, a great thing to be in Canada in this period during which there have been more chamber groups, and more chamber groups have been figuring out how to make this a sustainable career path. And we've had a lot of time to do a lot of things as opposed to just play concerts
Mhm.
and be done with it. We've had bandwidth to react to the times that we're living in, and have our projects sort of reflect that, and sort of really evolve as musicians,
Mm.
and not just kind of get on a treadmill and go, and then maybe stop. And I think we've enjoyed the mix as a result, and I think
Mm.
it's one of the reasons we're still moving along at 29 years.
Yeah. Speaking of commissions and programming and meaningful programming, the works that you're going to play on April 2nd are there are some really interesting works there, and I think some things people will have heard before and some not, and some interesting stories and meaningful stories I think behind some of the works. So you have works by Beethoven, Shostakovich, Silvestrov. and if we're lucky, a little bit of Dinuc Gujaratni's love triangle piece as well. I would love to hear more about your relationship with each of the works, and particularly the Silvestrov, because it is a commission and it's such an important time to be playing music by Ukrainian composers.
Well, I'll just jump into that. I mean, I had I'm Ukrainian and was learning about Silvestrov's music. I mean, had heard about him since the early 2000s, and we had not traveled to Ukraine at that point. I had not, there. I had contacts there, had musician contacts in Lviv, and in Kiev, and somehow it never worked out. Finally, there seemed to be possibility on the horizon, and I actually was out there traveling with another group, which doesn't happen that often. But in that case, we were playing in Moscow, of all places, and I made a side trip to Kiev, and I had an opportunity to meet Silvestrov, Yevhen Stankovich, another actually a composer, a Ukrainian composer with connection with Winnipeg. He was actually, if I'm not mistaken, Yevhen Stankovich was the first composer in residence for the Winnipeg New Music Festival. And he and his family emigrated to Canada for a brief time way back then, but they eventually moved back. And the Soviet Union fell apart, and that was a good thing. With Silvestrov, I mean, I just arranged to meet him, and I brought him a bunch of recordings. And at that point, we had just released our complete Mozarts, because it was like 2005, 2006 in there, somewhere, that this trip finally happened. And we had a great meeting. I mean, his whole story. I mean, he as a young composer. I mean, he was born in Kiev, and went, like so many composers in those days, sort of pulled towards Moscow and the Moscow Conservatory. That's where all the talented people in the Soviet Union and its related, republics, went. And he had his training, and was this very sort of modernist, composer, and sort of following the trends, and was starting to gain some recognition far outside of Ukraine. I think in New York and in Europe, and in the early 70s, the Composers Union was, of course, being heavily scrutinized by the Soviet government, and they wanted sort of social realism and all of that, and he just refused. They started pressuring him to change his style. I mean, this is not unlike the experience that Shostakovich had in his time. I mean, he wasn't Silvestrov wasn't a hugely powerful figure. He hadn't been sort of pulled up the ranks in the way that Shostakovich had. I mean, that was an extremely awkward and terrible position that he had to create from. He was the head. He was the head of the composers union. Silvestrov was just a member, and actually, I think what really triggered his opposition to all things, and eventual withdrawal from public life, was that the Soviet Union attacked Czechoslovakia. That all happened, and he made a huge declaration, and he was asked to retract it, refused. Was asked to change his style, refused, and just withdrew. And that was it. So what does that mean in that day and age? I mean, in that system, if you were to withdraw in that way from public law, withdraw from the composers union, you were essentially giving up your salary as a composer. I mean, this idea of commissioning, and private commissions, I mean, that's very unfamiliar to them. It's not the way it worked. You achieve a status. Once you're included in the union, you have a fee. You're asked to do certain things, and he refused. He withdrew. I think he was. I understand that he was basically teaching music to elementary school kids, and he has, and I think in some ways it was a really saving grace for him, because with kids, there's always a possibility, the world of the imagination, and he has this youthful energy. He's 84 now. He he didn't stop creating. He created a little. He has a studio, and I hope he still has it when he comes back to Ukraine after all this is over. And Annalie and I actually visited him there, and he has his little grand piano, his Royale, and he would just quietly create things. And occasionally, if something actually this happened while we were there, he was playing us this quiet piece at his piano, and he developed this whole quiet music, ticha muzika, a very personal and intimate form of expression. You know, and there's a long tradition. Creative tradition in that part for composers to actually create music for poetry, to recite poetry while they're playing. I mean, there's a whole kind of thing like that, and that's very much his thing as well. And from that came this very delicate style, one that reflects the sounds of composers previous, the sounds of the world around him, and it's very much this sort of metaphorical, style. I mean, in his mind, I mean, he says that all music has been created, and it's just sort of his role, to kind of grasp certain things and bind them together loosely, and have them be a sort of a contemporary reflection of all that is around us. So I asked him, again, this idea of the commission. I said, well, look, we've got some Ukrainian people, some friends of ours, Marta and Ian Ignatovich, agreed to give us, some funds that we could take over to Ukraine and really support a couple of composers. And this was an unusual thing, and he wasn't used to actually, I mean, he liked our Mozart, he liked our music, we enjoyed our conversation, but I mean, it's, just because the commission was there didn't mean that the inspiration was there. So he said, okay, well, I'll try, give me some time. And I was there for a few days, and I got a call from he didn't know how to reach me while I was still there. And Stankovic calls me and says, call up Silvestrov, he has something for you. And so the meeting went. He asked me to meet him in the metro stop on the east side of the Dnipro River, and he met me there with this like an IGA bag or a Safeway bag, with a score and a CD. And he said, here, that's it. I got it. I was inspired. And he had listened to our Mozarts, and he just created these fugitive visions of Mozart. And we eventually we came back. We played it for him at another time. We were there with him for his 70th birthday.
Mhm.
Hard to believe that was 14 years ago. And he's he left. I mean, he stayed in Kiev in his apartment well into the third week of this Russian invasion. Just refused to leave. In 2014, I mean, he was when the big Maidan events were happening. I mean, he was right there. I mean, he's entirely a very strongly felt Ukrainian, and he's created an enormous amount of music now in the last 20 years for the Kiev Chamber Choir. So his vocal and chamber have really evolved, and then he's up to 10 symphonies now, and his music is recorded on ECM, and lots of people know about it. He's in Berlin right now. Finally, he left with his daughter. He's in Berlin, and everybody's playing his music. So we couldn't imagine, it's an interesting thing. Jamie, why don't you talk about the Shostakovich? I mean, it's, yeah,
Well, I
interesting
mean,
position.
I think it's a piece that Harry wanted us to play, so we're happy to do that. But I mean, the Shostakovich, I mean, he had a very tumultuous relationship, obviously, with the Soviet powers that be, and I think especially in the last movement, you really hear, what essentially is a war machine off in the distance coming, and it just, it just kind of tramples over everything in its path. The movement does end with a major chord. The whole piece ends with this major chord. So there is a slight sense of optimism, but I guess it's, kind of short-lived as we're seeing horrors we haven't seen since the Second World War. Well, I guess we've seen other things, other places in the world, but I mean, this is like an old school, you
Mhm.
know, battle. It's just awful. So,
Mhm.
so that's something that that you will experience in the Shostakovich. And the Silvestrov it's almost a bit like a lullaby after that. I mean, he takes little fragments of Mozart, and then adds pedal and kind of blurs things along. So it's almost as if you were to squint with your ears, you could hear Mozart, and it's really just a lovely, I don't know, 12-minute sort of meditation almost.
Okay.
And then the other piece that we were originally going to play and hope to play some of as an encore by Danuk Gujaratny, and Danuk is really sort of a great sort of modern Canadian story, in that he was born in Sri Lanka, lived in Dubai, studied in Manchester, bounced around, did his doctorate at U of T, and then I met him when I was playing with Symphony Nova Scotia, and he was conductor. I didn't know that as a pianist he had toured with Yo-Yo Ma's Silk Road Ensemble. So I mean, he's really an amazing, sort of triple threat, musician. And he just said, well, Jamie, I've written a piano trio, and I was wondering if you'd like to play it. And I said, sure, and he said he'd already, secured some funding for it. So, I mean, basically he just sort of, kind of gifted us with the trio. And it's called Love Triangle, and it's been one of our most popular commissions. It incorporates some sort of almost improvisatory like passages where two of us will just be sort of playing this kind of rhythmic groove that just sort of repeats and is kind of hypnotic and is in 7 beats, so it's a little bit, it's not super predictable. And then the third person has a cadenza written over that to not be played in time with the others. So it has this wonderful sense of freedom, and the strings will do some pitch bending things, and it really has this beautiful, exotic, yet also sort of a neo-romantic and contemporary feel to it. It's really a fantastic piece. So.
Amazing.
And actually, Danuk is just, I mean, he's got he and his wife have how old's their baby?
It's arrived.
I don't know. Okay, so they're expecting
very soon.
And he's got a new position at University of Ottawa. So I mean, it's just great to see, him welcomed. He and his mother have emigrated to Canada, and it's really great to see success come his way, because he is a lovely guy and a really talented musician.
And as you said, it was Harry Strub who requested the piece, as well as the Shostakovich, and the whole concert is more than a concert. It's also celebrating Harry's 30 years as artistic director of Virtuosi Concerts, right up until 2020. And of course, he's the founder as well of the organization. Could you talk a little bit about your relationship with him over the years, and what it?
Well, I mean, I think really he's been one of those very important sort of presenter, mentor, kind of figures in our lives, because he's been there 30 years. We're almost 30 years. So really, our careers really grew with help of presenters like Harry. And it's great when a presenter over the years becomes a friend. And it was always great to see him. We did a lot of concerts there. I did concerts with other musicians there over the years. And I mean, one of my funny memories was there was one time it was like minus 35 or something. I mean, we just didn't even want to go to the car to go anywhere for dinner. And I remember distinctly, it was vending machine dinner that night. It was like, we had some change, and, I had a granola bar, and somebody else had some, little package of peanuts from the plane or something. And we sort of cobbled together something. But I mean, it was so bad. And later that night, visiting an old friend, Dave Morose, he did that thing. It was the first time in my life where I saw he says, open the kitchen door. So I opened the kitchen door, and he has a pot of boiling water. He throws it up in the air, and it all kind of evaporates before it hits the ground, because it's just that cold. So
you look like you've never seen that before.
Never seen that.
You'll see that.
You have to do this.
It's like sort of minus 35 to minus 40. It's incredible.
Sort of skips a step. It goes from liquid to vapor. It's awesome.
Okay, that's my.
Anyhow, listen, I actually remember, of course. I mean, on one of our visits to the series, we played, actually it was multiple concerts, and we played all of the Mozart trios, and that probably was 2005 or 2006, so it would have been right around the time that Silvestrov was writing this piece for us. So that's a nice way to circle back. I've had many conversations with Harry over the years, and not always in Winnipeg. I mean, he and I used to meet regularly in New York in January. we'd be both there for conferences. We usually met during the Chamber Music America conference. It was always so great, for the Canadian contingent down there, to meet and to see each other in that context, to contemplate, to hear the things that were being discussed, to have discussions about directions. And Harry has always had a really very independent and sort of self-developed sense of what it is that he likes and artists that interest him and directions that I've always been impressed with. Yeah, it's always fun to look at the lineup, for the series. I mean, they're always sort of people that are surprising, that aren't going to other places in Canada, that somehow Harry has encountered, made contact with, and fallen in love with their playing. And he has very specific things that sort of fuel his passion for chamber music. And it's I think the whole community has been very lucky for the last 30 years that there has been this steady presence for chamber music in Winnipeg. And it's exciting to see that there has been a succession here. We can't and it'll be fun to work with you to help keep all of this going and build it up. It's obviously for our trio, it's playing and continuing to commission, doing the things that we enjoy doing is very important. But increasingly, we're directing energy and thinking about the things that we can do to ensure that chamber musicians or musicians who are choosing the path of the small ensemble, have good support in the form of presenters across the country, and that everybody's working together, to sort of lean into these times that we live in. What is it that chamber music can do? How is classical music relevant in these times? How might we support new directions in curation? Right? That really, and how might we support young artists who are going to be those curators, and how might we support the development of their confidence as curators, and have them be the ones that really combine things and create music experiences for audiences into the future, that both celebrates all of this music that we love, the long tradition, and the contemporary music and everything that may still be. So Harry's built a foundation for all that, and he's loved doing it the whole time. And it's sad to see, actually, that that well, I mean, look, it's always a bittersweet thing. Wonderful to see all that's been done. Great that we're coming to celebrate this, and wonderful that the organization continues to thrive and move forward, particularly, in these times.
Yeah.
Big challenge we've all lived through, but here we are, so it's
Here we
happening.
are. Thank you for everything you're saying. This is wonderful. I hope we can keep the conversation going well beyond this chat. And I'm so looking forward to your concert, to meeting you properly. We've crossed paths here and there, but to once again spend time together and hear you play. For everyone listening, please come to the concert. It's a concert and a party. It's amazing music. You don't want to miss it. Saturday, April 2nd at 7:30 p.m., St. Andrew's United Church. Tickets are at virtuosiconcerts.ca. And once again, we have $10 student tickets at the door 20 minutes before the concert. So see you there, and thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks.